Well, welcome. My name is Joseph Seiler. I'm a professional business coach. I'm going to talk today about corporate brand. Every person, every organization, even industry sectors or automobile types, or even an event. Think circus, a gala ball, or a hockey game. Each of these has a brand. And one of those tricky things about brand is it takes self-awareness to understand my own brand. And completely accurate self-awareness of one's brand is rare because we see ourselves through our own eyes only. We don't have that external view. We may think we know what our impact is on the world, but there's unintended impact. A number of decades ago, there was a book out called The Ugly American. And it was written by an investigative reporter who traveled the world and asked people what they thought about the United States and about American people. And to the amazement, to the surprise, to the chagrin and concern of the American public, a good portion of the world didn't like Americans. Their experience of America was not positive. And thus the title, The Ugly American. The American people did not know. But the reporter went out and asked others and found out what the brand was. So, what's your brand personally and in your company? And what if you don't like that brand? What if you don't like the brand once you get connected to what it actually is? So I invite you to experience this webinar by really trying to get in behind the questions and the experiences that I'm offering you, and to feel it from your own point of view. Be that investigative reporter about your company or about yourself, depending on your reason for doing this work. So, how do you feel as you imagine driving across the continent in one, and then another, and then the third of these vehicles? What difference do you notice in the sound as you drive along? Just the sound of the car. What are your expectations with respect to reliability? Are you going to need a service center somewhere along the way? Or are you expecting to just cruise on through coast to coast? What I'm asking you to do is to get yourself inside each car for a few seconds. Make note of your priority in choosing your first, second, or third candidate. And before you do that, just see yourself behind the wheel as an 18-wheeler passes you on a narrow road. How do you feel inside these three cars? Yeah, so just notice your first, second, and third choice. Make a note of those on the side. And again, notice the smells, the sensations, and the visuals in particular as you go to buy your banana or your orange. What is the story in your head as you go pick out a piece of fruit at the gas station? Absorb the sensations in your body as you pick up the fruit, pay for it, peel it, and taste it. As you stand outside the fruitique, as you stand outside the grocery store, and as you stand outside the gas station, How do you feel? What is your experience? And rate these three possibilities as first, second, and third choice. So now, rather than spend 59 cents for a banana, spend $1,000 for a transoceanic flight. This is a bigger investment. What color do you see as you sit inside the Aeroflot plane? What does it smell like? And what is the temperature? What's the service like on Aeroflot? And how is the food? Now try Virgin Air. You're on the Virgin Air airplane. How do you experience the uniforms worn by the attendants? What is the lighting like in this airplane? How are you feeling in your seat? What do you see in front of you on the seat back in front of you? Now transition across to United Airlines. What's it like here at United? So how do you rate this experience compared to the other two airlines? And before you put down your ratings of first, second, and third, how were you treated at check-in in each of these three cases? And what do you expect to have happen when you deplane from Virgin Airlines or from Aeroflot or from United Airlines? So notice your rating. Just put it down on a piece of paper for yourself. So here's the definition I like to use. And notice that the brand is not in you, and it's not in your company's experience, but it's in the experience, the perception of your public. Now when I say your public, I mean the part of the world that you connect with, the people you serve, possibly your customers and their connections. It's how they experience you. That's the brand. So your assessment of the three cars, the choice of where to buy your fruit, and which airline you'd prefer to fly on, that is their brand. And their brand is in you. So in the same way, your brand is out there in your customers and in your public. Brand is certainly not something in a display case in your corporate foyer. So my premise in this webinar is that you can only guess your own brand and that you must discover it rather than declare it. Remember the ugly American experience. An entire country didn't realize that much of the rest of the world had this other idea about them. One more. It is not about the coffee. It is the whole build-up of memories over time associated with the experience around the coffee that you have accumulated in your repeated connections to these three versions of the coffee. And just notice the price of the coffee in the three cases as well. Quite different. Brand is not bad or good. It just kind of is. Brand is a reaction. Some people love Starbucks. Some people hate Starbucks. And the ones who love it and hate it often point to the same attributes of Starbucks as for their reasons. I hate it because, and the other one says, I love it because of that exact same thing. So here's the question. What do villains tend to look like? What does a villain sound like? What color does a villain typically wear? Now here's a technical term. The villain has a brand expectation. Kind of a techie term, brand expectation. Just the word villain. The brand expectation needs to be upheld. So someone acting like a villain has to work at it and has to be consistent with the brand expectation to be an effective villain. Now, a real-life villain just is a villain and would likely disagree with the label villain in the first place and might not even know that they are a villain. If you are a North American and you travel to Europe or Asia, you may see the cars there, and by association with your direct experience with certain cars at home, you would guess or assume or expectation, a certain brand experience, starting with what you see there. So you see the cars and you have a brand expectation. The size of the vehicle, the position of the steering wheel, left or right side drive. Maybe the size of the tires. Many things. They all contribute to trigger in you a brand expectation. And so what you do before you actually touch or get in and drive or you have a direct experience of the car, through brand association, because of the cars you have seen and experienced at home, you generate this brand expectation. Quick example. A rather large, obviously muscular, and rugged-looking man comes into your view. As you get close, he raises a hand as if to ask you a question. You pause, and when he speaks, he sounds like Little Orphan Annie. What just happened? A little bit of a hiccup there, some discontinuity. So this scenario, the large muscular man and the Little Orphan Annie voice, there's a lack of brand continuity. Only because there was a brand expectation which was built up through brand association. I know, a little bit techie. But if you're reading these branding books and listening to the branding sort of gurus, they use this kind of language all the time. And I suppose that's their brand. So I'm just letting you know what they're saying. This brand thing can be a little bit of a tangled web. So let's have a look at the soft drink industry. Think logo, and then think taste test. Here's the question. Which one, the logo or the taste test, will have the greater impact on your experience of that product? Let's go a little further. I want you to be a long-time fan of a particular soft drink. I mean, a real die-hard fan. Now, if you aren't one, you probably know somebody who is. So imagine that person if it's not you. And be invited to a taste test table at the mall. You're walking down the mall and there's the taste test table. Many diehards will actually say, no, pass it by. Their mind is made up. Why? Brand loyalty. They get this deep brand loyalty. So much so they're not willing to upset their connection with their favorite product. How did that happen? Well, I'll bet you $1 it wasn't the logo. How long did it take to get that level, that depth of brand loyalty? I'm going to say it was not just a couple of minutes and it wasn't just one exposure. It takes time and it takes consistency. Let's talk motorcycles. Some people are Harley-Davidson people. Some people are not. Most would have to admit that Harley-Davidson had decades of inferior technical performance compared to Asian motorcycles. And I mean decades. Yet, Harley enjoyed and continues to enjoy fierce brand loyalty. How did that happen? Well, in the early days of the American motorcycle, there were a number of popular, shall we say, mainstays in the industry, and Harley-Davidson was one of them. but so was the Indian motorcycle and a few others. So what happened? After the Second World War, a small group of people came back from the war, and they started this thing, this club called the Hells Angels. And they became notorious. They had an image. They had testosterone appeal. And they all drove Harley-Davidson motorcycles. There was a time when Harley-Davidson had an ad, a picture of a Hells Angels group with their motorcycles. And the caption below the ad was, "Would we do anything other than build the very best motorcycle for these customers?" Now that's not the exact wording, but that was the message. In other words, you don't mess with the Hells Angels, and they drive Harleys, so I guess Harley has to be good. But what was really happening is it was the testosterone thing, and it was the group, the attraction of the group that excited people. So if you had a Harley, you could kind of, loosely be associated as a rebel, and maybe even you might have seen a Hells Angel one day. Funny, isn't it? Then around 1990, they started something called the Harley Owners Group. And this was for the masses. It was the big experience generator. And they now started to move away from the Hells Angel Association. And they also got to use the F word to describe Harley Owners Group events. Yes, Harley-Davidson tells us that owning a Harley automatically makes you a member of the Harley Owners Group family, the F word. And part of the experience is that there are rallies, there are posse rides, poker runs, and games on your motorcycle, of course, on the lawn on a Saturday afternoon. What could be more family-like than that? So they did some deliberate brand shifting. They moved away from association with Hells Angels and moved towards an association of this owners group that had family values, and you still got to do all the cool stuff. You got to do the riding together in a big group and have the games on your motorcycle on a Saturday afternoon. It's wonderful stuff. So they shifted their brand. So shifting the brand is the techie term in this case. Brand shift. The decisions that you make about your brand loyalties are personal and come from a collection of preferences. And so too for your public. The most important component in your decisions as a consumer are visceral. It's the visceral component. It's from a feeling, a reaction. That's how most of us find our answers to this important decision-making process. Interesting question. When we consider how we have come to embrace certain products, companies, people, events, it is rare that a singular moment did it. Advertising is all around us. 1,500 to 2,000 pieces of advertising in an average day is how many we see. That's what we're told. And we defend ourselves by blocking as best we can. We don't want to get overwhelmed. We don't want to consider every advertisement as real. But then again, one day, there it is. That thing that we keep seeing in all the ads. And, it kind of has our interest, so you try it. In that moment of trying it, what happened to all that advertising? That massive advertising budget managed to convince you to try it. And the try, the experience, trumps the advertising. Either it is the finale in the convincing or selling process, or it tanks. And the entire ad, the advertising budget becomes a joke. You'd never buy it again. As a matter of fact, it's quite possible that you might start telling two friends not to buy it. Become a negative. It's in the experience. It's in the experience. Yes, the famous dinner hour phone call. I submit that that brand experience came from repeated dinner hour phone calls and possibly talk about those dinner hour phone calls at the office. It's to the point now around our house where if it rings between 5:30 and 6:30, we don't even get out of our chair to see who it's from. If it's from somebody who wants to talk to us, they'll leave a message. Yes, here we are. What about that advertising budget? How big would it have to be without the deliver? Some companies decide to rebrand themselves. That may be why you're on this webinar, because you're considering doing it for your company. They change the look, they change the words of description, but they don't change the heart of the experience. So I ask you, is that going to work? Consistency over time. In the same way that you've developed loyalty to the products that you quite like and will defend, it took time. It took repeated, consistent experience. So, let's take a preliminary stab at guessing what your company's brand might be at this moment. Now, we all have brand, whether we like it or not. It's not that we suddenly get brand, like we have brand, because people have experienced your company, they have experienced you. So the brand's there. Let's find out what it is. So let's get into the neighborhood of where your brand lives. One of the things that I've learned in leading company groups and brand discovery is that if you ask 10 company employees to name the top 3 values of the corporation, you can expect a wide range of responses, especially if the answers are confidential, because they get more truthful. And if the guidance is, what are the 3 things that you most often experience in your interactions with your company? It's all about the doing. So let's derive your corporate brand. So the next series of slides are a set of questions, and if you take notes against these questions, by the end of it we'll have a pretty good picture of where your present brand is, and it will also show you where you want to go and what you need to tweak and adjust. So, consistently do, even pay extra to make sure it happens. This is the kind of thing that if a new employee did it, you would want to spring up and say, no, we don't do that around here. And then you might say, this is what we actually do. In other words, you would explain the brand. I was in a company and noticed a stack of boxes to go out via courier, and I overheard one of the leaders in the company ask the shipper, is this one box coming to us, or is it going out to one of our customers? The one box in question was in pretty bad shape. Crooked, excessive tape, big crimp in one side. The shipper took one look and said, "Ooh, I see what you mean." And when I later left the company, passing by the same pile, a new box was present. What is it for you? The bigger driver. Some examples. Think the United Nations, the bigger driver, the ultimate goal is world peace. If you consider the bigger driver for Oprah, it's different than the bigger driver for Jerry Springer. Sometimes the bigger driver is part of the expression that the company uses. FedEx, the world on time. That's public brand expression. So if you're into those techie terms, brand expression is the statement that they give out to the public. So what might it be for you folks? And don't beat yourself up if you haven't got a brilliant, crisp, clear statement here. Just put down what comes to mind and we'll work on it some more later. Interesting, this style thing. Think of a few people here. Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey, the comedian actor. And Madonna, the singer, also actress. Paris Hilton. And one more person, just to show contrast, Colin Powell, past Secretary of State for the United States of America. So for your company, which public figure might be close to having the same style as your company? It might be easier for you to name the style by association. Okay. Who do most people associate with your company, or what do they associate with your company? Let's go back to Virgin Air, international airline. So associated with that company might be Sir Richard Branson, the owner, founder. I said the word international. Well, I just think Virgin Air is international. For me, it kind of feels glamorous. And because of the Richard Branson connection, kind of swashbuckling. And it's all about the high life, about movie stars. And hey, let's call a spade a spade. It's kind of sexy. So what attributes, characteristics, behaviors would people most associate with your company? Just pick 2 or 3. I love this question. Do you have a promise on your company website? Do you personally have a promise that you make to the world or to yourself, maybe to your family, maybe to your company? I'm not sure. Do you personally have a promise? Have you talked about such things at your company? What might change if you did talk about things like the company promise as a group? What might change? So just take a stab at the neighborhood of your company's brand promise. Another one of those technical terms, brand promise. What might that be? Some examples. The medical profession, you think of doctors. Doctors take the Hippocratic Oath when they're completing their education and actually becoming an MD. And that promise is what they live their lives as, and that is to protect and save life. News reporters, their promise is that their quest is for truth. They want to tell the truth. The police departments, the people, the policemen and policewomen, their promise is to uphold the law. And isn't it awful when they break their promise? Any of these people, when they break their promise. So, what's your company promise? Okay. Here's that consistent word again. And in this case, think things like maybe level of respect, level of courtesy, acceptance, maybe regarding diversity, the way you listen, the way your company listens. Well, let's go straight to it. What about payments, the way you handle money? What's consistent between the way your company handles money with your customers and with your staff? I once did a session with a number of executives who all claim to uphold a brand of approachability, listen to customers, respect for customers, etc., etc. They had different ways of saying it, but they're very strong on this. So we set up the speakerphone in the middle of the boardroom table, and we had each executive phone their own company on the speakerphones. Everybody could hear the response and the interaction. Nearly 40% of those executives could not get through to a real person at their own company. So wait a minute. Listening to customers, respect for customers, approachability. Oops. Oops. And there's that brand awareness thing. At least 40% of the people in the room really believed that they were approachable. They didn't know. They didn't know. Well, let's just say it was a very quiet room for a while after that. So what would your customers agree to? And go ahead. What would you want them to agree to? Put your aspirations there as well. I think this is what they would say yes to, and I'm kind of hoping that maybe they might say yes to this other thing too. Brand aspiration. Well, where in your mental hierarchy are your suppliers? And therefore, how do you or your company treat those suppliers? And how does that treatment fit with your desired brand message? Do some bridging. What transfers? What's the same across all three: staff, clients, suppliers? And my broken record message here, it's not in the logo. It's not on the website. It's not in the literature. It's in the experience they have with you. Strength. I've got the little note in the bottom left there, your public. These are the people that you want to touch, and maybe one layer out from them. It's not the entire world. Some people are selling products that some parts of the world wouldn't want or understand and wouldn't care. So your public. So from the public and customer point of view, what is your greatest strength? Think Toyota, Ferrari, and Ford. Lots in common, and you probably have one differentiating word for each of those three companies. Toyota, Ferrari, and Ford. Now, if for one of them a single word is just not jumping out at you, maybe that company is having a case of brand inconsistency, shallow brand depth, maybe some brand weakness. So, what might be your company's greatest strength? Among your specific competitors and within your overall industry. Differentiation. IKEA is in the furniture and housewares business. So some differentiating features there might be they're a Swedish company, and then they really let you know that. And the color of their entire building are Swedish colors, the blue and yellow. They do have a quality image. They're really big on build-it-yourself stuff. They got tremendous variety. And they are a very big box store. So, brand differentiation. Remember that part about what you'd pay extra to ensure having happen? Is that what differentiates you? Core company value. I'll give you an example. Think about Cirque du Soleil in the circus business. Or is it the entertainment business? But they've got the word circus in their name. So core values for Cirque du Soleil: acrobatic excellence, fantasy and illusion, awe. Cirque du Soleil has a core company value of awe. They create awe in the people that experience their product. And that's the thing that they will pay extra for to make sure they get delivered. So here we go. What might these people, these families, be willing to defend about your company? So how does your brand show up in your company sick policy? Or in your HR policies? Or even in the way the cars are allowed to park in your parking lot? What examples would your families use to make their case about what your company stands for? What examples would they use to make their case about what your company stands for? It is usually harder to accurately name my personal values. Can you name your top 5 values? And here's a test. For each value you name, give at least 3 examples where your actions demonstrate and prove that these values are highly held because you act on them. I've done many workshop experiences around values, and most people really struggle to get 5 that they can name clearly and give good examples for. So let's just flip that a little bit. Now pick somebody you feel that you know fairly well and probably spend quite a bit of time with. Chances are better than even that you can name more of their top 5 and give lots of proof examples. Why? Because you experience them. So too with your company. It's harder from the inside. The question you have answered provide a great start at deriving your brand. The last series of slides on deriving the brand are showing you the different sides, at least some of the different sides, of the experience you provide to the public. But you really do need to ask other people. Ask your staff internally, and I'm going to call their families internal as well, and go external, at least to your customers and suppliers. Those people, they are the keepers of your brand. They're the ones that propagate it and can enliven and strengthen it or kill it. Remember the Tylenol scare a few years ago? Somebody tampered with some bottles of Tylenol, injecting poison. And what did Johnson & Johnson do? Immediately, they recalled all the product. I'm talking all the product. They very quickly redesigned the bottle to prevent tampering, and then reissued all the stock of Tylenol back to the shelves, entirely at their own cost. Now that is being what you say you are. I work with one company where they shipped product. The person who was the project leader included a personal letter with the product and says, you bought this from my company, but I'm the one that really put this together, and I have personally checked it, and I think it is exactly what we say it was. If you have any problem at all, I want you to contact me directly. Here's my direct phone line. And the project leader would sign it. And there was one example where They shipped some product all across the country, from the East Coast to literally the West Coast. And they got a call. The receiver was at the airport and was quite upset that the packaging had not done well in the transit across the country. It turns out, after some investigation, that they had been promised that this thing would go on the aircraft on one end and get off the aircraft on the other, and it turned out that they actually changed airplanes with this thing like 4 times. So it was just not designed for that. Anyhow, so what happened on this phone call is the employee who had signed the letter gets the call, the upset customer at the other end, and the employee says, "I'll be on a plane this afternoon." The customer said, "Pardon?" "Yeah, I'll be there this afternoon, and we'll make it right." And the customer says, "Well, how can you do that? Don't you need approval or anything?" "No, I'm responsible for that, and I'll be there." And the customer then kind of lightened up and said, "Well, actually, it's really not that bad, and I don't think anything inside is broken. I just think some of the external stuff got kicked around a little bit. It's kind of dirty and stuff. And I'm sorry I called. I guess I overreacted." Well, wow. Well, wow. Be what you say you are. You can probably name the brand of that company. You can probably describe what it's like to work there. You probably know lots about that company just from this one example. What are we going back to? What would you pay extra to make sure that it happens? Okay. Using your discoveries in the foregoing questions and answers, state what you believe your brand probably is. Ask others to help you refine that description. Then add some aspiration, what you want it to be. Yes, and then by all means, generate the website, etc., to tell your brand story based on what you've learned and what you aspire your brand to be. Back to Johnson & Johnson, the Tylenol people, and many other things. If you've seen Johnson & Johnson on the television in the last little while, they really aligned themselves very closely with the nursing community. How's that for consistency? How does that land with you? They're in the pharmaceutical companies, and they've aligned themselves with nursing. So what if they had aligned themselves with, baseball? I don't know that that would hurt them, but I think the nursing probably helps them. Now we got Budweiser over here. Budweiser in baseball? Check. Budweiser in nursing? Huh? What did you say? Little inconsistent. Consistency between the telling and the doing adds clarity to the brand message. So when you do your messaging and your websites and so on and so forth, be aware of the impact and the resulting experience of the one who receives the message. All different parts of it need to be very consistent. So here's an example. I just changed the background color on this slide. How does this background color of black differ from the previous one, which was blue? So part of my brand is to teach and coach and to do so in a more experiential rather than dogmatic or academic method. And I'm just trying to show you. You're experiencing the black right now. We are told through advertising, but a lot of companies and their products, many that we have not met, that telling part is designed to suggest a brand experience and to invite. Remember the taste test with the soft drinks. Watch a car ad and notice how much motion, music, special video effects. Wow. And in many cases, there is a shot from behind the steering wheel as if you are driving. Highly experiential. Deliberately so. If we do, perchance, then meet the company or the product, if it turns out to be pretty close to as advertised, what happens to all those planted experiences? Well, they become more real. More as if you already had them even though you just saw them and you've had one real experience. You start becoming a fan. Well, and what if the reality is not close enough? Gone. Gone like a house of cards. And quite possibly you might become a negative fan and start undoing their brand expectations. A little bit more technical jargon. Once I have reinforcing experiences, the brand depth starts to grow. The brand strength starts to grow. The brand promise becomes real if my consistent experience continues to be reinforced, well, for many years maybe. And if I get a hiccup, an off-brand moment after many years of consistent brand experience, oh, that can just be absorbed, discounted, shrugged, and says, oh, I don't know what that was. That's not real. Forgiveness becomes easy. Now, the Tylenol thing was not just a little tiny hiccup. That was big. But, hey, Tylenol's on the shelf and doing fine. Johnson & Johnson's doing great. They just handled it. In my work with corporate groups, this promise thing can be highly emotional. After all, promise is a moral statement. It's about integrity. It makes the brand personal and highly valued, something to be protected. And that's what I mean about creating that quality of history around the promise. If your company, if your group can agree to a promise, you just watch what happens after that. People start sort of helping each other to stay on brand. Because hey, we all promised, and we're all painted with the same brush. So, if I'm off brand, it hurts the company, and if you're off brand, it hurts the company. Yes, if you're off brand, it hurts me because I promised it as well. Important. Think about generating a promise for your company. The part about even if you haven't used one is the arena of the tellers, not the doers, the advertising, the brand promise that gets put out there on the website and in the literature. And the word gets around, and folks talk. And then at some moment, brand happens. At some moment, the experience, the opportunity to try it happens, and boom. We've demonstrated what brand is, where it comes from, how to begin to derive your company's brand from the inside. In other words, to understand what you have right now as a brand, and we all do all the time. And we've shared some techie talk about brand, so you can keep up with the other pundits who are out there writing books and telling stories. Heck, you could become the brand pundit around your office. All of this work shows you where you are, and from here you can more clearly see what you need to do to fulfill your brand aspirations. And aspiration is a part of the brand identification building process. So a lot of this work is introspective. You've got to look inside as the questions demonstrate. It requires the input from those you interact with. So that's the outside part. And when you do it, it's really, really amazing what happens. Things come together. I worked with a company not too long ago. In January of the year that I was there, I didn't show up until April, by the way. But in January they had really abysmal performance of some of their products. They had just really nasty stuff, and as a matter of fact, widely held experiences. Many of their customers were having a really tough time with stuff. We found out that there was an upgrade made in the design area that had not been discussed and had not been tested and had not been documented, and away it went. And they tracked down that was the issue. It took until July. I was there in April until July. It took until July to turn the brand around. And what are you willing to pay for to ensure it happens? That company stood up and they sought out every unhappy customer they had. They admitted what happened. They told the truth. Rare, eh? They told the truth, and they replaced every single one of the products without charge. Every single one. And by July, many of those people who were actually negative about this company were now rabid fans and telling two friends and saying, I can't believe what happened. This is so fantastic. You got to buy from these guys. It was really great. It was really great to watch. A few resources for you. New Brand World is Scott Bedbury's book, is one of many books you can find on brand. But this one I particularly like, mainly because the guy's done it. I mean, he was the brand guru who built up the Starbucks brand and the Nike brand, and he's done some big things. And he has lots of examples from the marketplace, really live examples. So you can look there and you can see, and it's really good to understand because of the example. William Maruda, he's the self-acclaimed personal branding guru, and if you go to his website there's a Reach 360 brand, a little sort of test that you can buy. I think it's $29.95 or something, and the idea is that it's you give it the program email addresses of people you'd like to participate in your test, and you get to write the top paragraph. And this test goes to all these people, and they need to describe you. They pick out attributes out of a big table. They answer questions like, if you were a car, which kind of car would you be and why, and so on, and try and get these people that know you to describe their experience of you. This whole thing gets compiled completely anonymous and comes back to you. One piece of advice that I would have, I sent this thing to I think it was 57 people, and when the answers started coming back, the first 10 or 12 or 15, all over the place. About 25 or 30, and it started to look like it was taking shape, but it wasn't until we get past 30, probably at the 35 range, 35 responses, where you could see quite clearly, there it is. There's the consistent, repeatable, over time. This is Joseph. This is him. And I could see myself in these answers. And the total I got back was in the high 40s. There were some who didn't respond at all. And one of the things that I did, and this may be part of the reason, is I didn't just choose people that I thought would like me. I tried to choose people who knew me professionally and personally, and tried to include people that I thought, this person and I never really did get along all that well, but we were in the same place for so and so many years, and we do know each other. So I picked a few like that, and they may have been the ones who didn't answer. I don't know. However, if you're going to do this thing, and I recommend it for yourself, it's quite illuminating. At least 35. Get over 40 people out there if you can. Cool. Well, this is me. And brand. It's like growing a tree from an acorn. It starts small. There's an intention, and the brand can become the oak tree with the huge trunk and the powerful branches, or it just depends on how it's treated. And yes, when it's a small seed and when it's a small seedling and a little tiny tree and maybe an inch in diameter, it's fragile. And until that tree gets to be to the point where you can hit it with a car and it survives, it's fragile. So the brand needs to be built with the care of a gardener growing a massive tree. So, one other question I want to ask of you is, who in your company is your brand champion? We need someone who's an inspirer or a holder or a protector of the brand. It might even be like, who's the brand police person, the one who makes sure that the look and feel of everything that goes out your door, including the shipping label and your invoices and all those other sorts of pieces of collateral, I call them. They all look the way the website looks, and they all look like the business cards, and there's a style to these things that it's consistent. People come to expect it in a certain way. Think Coca-Cola. I mean, everything Coca-Cola has that look, right? And although Coke has a number of logos, they have that look. They have the Coke look. Very consistent. So this is me, and I've really had fun. I've enjoyed working with you. The whole idea of brand is about self-awareness. And as a coach, self-awareness is something that I really help people to get connected with. Enjoy. Ring me if you like. Email if you like. It's been fun. Thanks very much.